I want to talk about this housing plan. A Labor government would buy up to 40% equity stakes in first home buyers' houses. 10,000 homes or 10,000 spaces in this promise. Is that too little, though? We're talking about lots of people wanting to get into the property market.
It's part of a broader plan that we've got to tackle the housing crisis. That, it's harder to buy than ever before, but it's also harder to rent than ever before, and there are more homeless Australians than ever before. This is targeted at people who are giving up on buying a home and looking like they're going to have to rent for the rest of their life because they can't afford the mortgage. I'll give you an example, Michael, of what I'm talking about. A woman I met on the central coast of New South Wales last year called Angela works in a school canteen. Her husband is a carpenter. They've got 3 kids. They want to buy a house that they can live in, for around about $900,000, but the bank won't give them that much because they don't earn enough. But they can get a loan for $500,000 or $600,000. This is a scheme that would help people like them. The research shows that a lot of younger people on lower incomes are dropping out of the housing market. Back when Bob Hawke was Prime Minister, about 60% of young Aussies on low incomes owned a house. Now it's about 28%. It's designed to help people like that. But it'll also help people in their middle ages and older ages. Think about people who get divorced, they sell the family home. I think only 34% of women who get divorced and sell the home buy another home within 5 years. So this isn't just for first home buyers, it's designed for people on lower incomes to avoid them having to rent for the rest of their life.
But won't this help force up house prices, creating a bigger problem, Jason, Clare, than the one you're trying to solve here?
Well, remember the question you asked me just a moment ago, Michael. You were suggesting it was too small. This is 10,000, clearly targeted at a group of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to buy a house in a market where there's about 600,000 homes bought or sold every year. The work that the Property Council and the Grattan Institute have done have indicated here that it's unlikely to have that impact you talk about. What's really pushing house prices up is interest rates, low interest rates, and that's pushing it out of the reach of the people I talked about a moment ago that are on those lower incomes. Do we really want to be the sort of society that cleaves apart, where you've got some people who are fortunate enough to own a home and others who miss out, who rent for the rest of their life? I'm worried about people in their 20s and 30s now who rent for the rest of their life and what that means when they retire in decades' time from now and they're still renting. We can do something about that, and policies like this that have been in place in the UK for a decade, in WA here where I am for 30 years, and are now being rolled out in Tasmania and New South Wales and Victoria, it can make a real difference.
OK, the Prime Minister's criticised this policy, saying, in his view, nobody wants Labor at the kitchen table. There is upside here if the housing market does go up at some stage in the future. Any future Labor government will win the benefit of that. But there's a downside, isn't there? If there's a sharp fall in the housing market, that's going to have a big impact on the budget bottom line with government equity stakes of up to 40%.
Well, Scott Morrison's a hypocrite on this. I think Australians already know that. But this is a perfect example of it. Because if you go back over the last decade, when he was Shadow Housing Minister, when he was Social Security Minister, when he was Treasurer, when he was Prime Minister, he's given these ideas a rap. Remember, these schemes exist in Victoria and in WA. The Liberal government in Tasmania is rolling it out as well. Whenever that happens, Scott Morrison says this is a great way to help people on low incomes to be able to buy a home. And now, because we've announced it, suddenly it's a bad idea. The fact is, with these schemes that have rolled out here and overseas, they make taxpayers money and they help people on lower incomes to be able to buy a home. And I think that's a good thing.
OK, housing is a big issue. So is aged care. Over the weekend, the head of Uniting Care, one of this country's biggest aged care operators, threw her support behind a 25% increase for aged care workers. The Health Services Union has gone to the Fair Work Commission to push for that. Does Labor support 25% in terms of the wage increase here?
Well, we support increasing the wages for aged care workers. You're seeing people leave the sector in droves. We've got to do something about that.
But to go as far as 25%, do you support the union's 25%?
Well, we're not putting a number on it. We're not putting a number on it, but we support the the work that the Fair Work Commission is doing. We're saying that we would fund it in government, and we would do more than that. We would make sure that there's nurses in nursing homes 24 hours a day, and we would improve the food and the nutrition at aged care. I think aged care has become a nightmare, Michael. A lot of people watching that have got parents in their 80s going into aged care would be terrified of doing that at the moment. But we can fix that. If you've got enough political will, if the government's willing to take on the challenge that exists here, we can make the aged care system work better. We can make childcare cheaper. We can make it easier to buy a home. We can make it easier to see a doctor. We can set up a National Anti-Corruption Commission to weed out corrupt politicians. We can give a voice to the Australian Parliament for Indigenous Australians, and a hell of a lot more. We just need to change the government.
Yeah, but you're talking the talk on aged care, and it's a very serious issue, as you say. If you're so concerned, why not? And they are underpaid, they are hardworking, they need all the help they can get. Why don't you support formally the 25% wage increase, pushed forward by a Labor-affiliated union?
Well, what I'm saying here is we're not putting a number on it, but we support the need to increase the wages of aged care workers. Right? We want to see... The other problem here, apart from wages, Michael, is that most of the people who work in aged care are working part-time or working in multiple aged care centres to be able to make ends meet. I think about 80% of people who work in aged care are working part-time. They want to work more hours. They also want to be better paid. The policies we're putting in place here, whether it's nurses 24 hours a day or more face-to-face hours between people who live in aged care centres and the carers who work there, that'll make sure that they get more work, more permanent work, full-time rather than part-time. And of course, we've got to make sure that they're better paid as well.
OK, we're less than 3 weeks to go before election day. I can hear all Australians watching us breathing a massive sigh of relief. How's it looking, do you believe, from Labor's perspective? And is it true that Anthony Albanese, with 3 weeks to go, can't afford any big mistakes on the campaign trail?
I reckon Aussies would be wishing it was probably only a week to go rather than 3 weeks. But it's great to have the boss back. He's out of ISO. We're ready. We've been able to show over the course of the last week we've got an experienced and capable team. We've got sensible and practical policies. You compare that to the other side. I think Australians have had a gutful of Scott Morrison and this decade-old government, and they're yearning for something better. They want something better, and we've been able to showcase some of those policies yesterday at the launch and over the course of this campaign, and there'll be more to come in the next 3 weeks.
Jason, Clare, appreciate your time this morning from Perth. Thank you.
Good on you. Thanks, Michael.